Had a fun run-in with the director of another department yesterday. She had mentioned to a co-worker of mine that she couldn't scan to email from the printer in her office. I'm the printer whisperer for our organization, so he asked me to look at it. I knew from experience that this director won't let me in her department to look at anything without prior permission. They're in an outside locked building filled with peer and she's super protective of her stuff, so I called and asked if I could come over and take a look at her printer. I explained that I wanted to run a few scan tests and have her or one of her people walk me through the process they use. That's when the conversation went south. Director, yelling across the phone, "This is a network issue. You don't do network issues. You're not allowed to handle network issues. Do not touch the network." I was stunned at her words and tone because 1. I'm the one in charge of printers. If something isn't working, I check it out, and if I can't handle it, it's moved up to my senior sysadmin and we work on it together so I learn about it. 2. This woman is director of non-IT department. She is equal to my boss, the CIO. She has no say as to what I can or cannot do or my daily duties, not can she yell at me like that. 3. I'm a freaking sysadmin. I deal with network stuff all day. I'm a network god in my office. But I played the grown-up, told her, "That's okay, director. I'll speak to senior sysadmin and see what is going on." I beat her phone call by a minute, just enough time to brief senior sysadmin on what was going on. He was amazed at director's attitude. "You're a sysadmin. What in the world is she talking about?" The fun part, her printer problem wasn't a network issue. The shortcut they're used to pressing on the printer screen had disappeared. I was able to walk senior sysadmin through how to put it back on the printer via a remote system. Back in 2009, our company purchased a horribly mismanaged company mostly for their technical ability and their customers. I was asked to come to the president's office and meet one of the crown jewels of this acquisition was a guy we will call Fred. For background, our IT department falls under the accounting department and headed by the CFO/treasurer. I do not work for or report to the president in any way, but professional courtesy he usually gets what he wants, for the most part. Fred seemed nice enough. We exchanged pleasantries and the president mentioned that he would be needing a new, beefy, top-of-the-line PCs for this new venture. I told him no problem. Just let me know the specs and I'll get it done. And I went on my merry way. Later that day the president asked me to stop back by his office for a little chat. Towards the end of the day, I swung by his office. The president wanted to let me know that Fred and his teams were really smart guys and that they would probably be the IT team for the company someday in the future. It would be best to really do a good job on this as this guy would likely be my boss at some point in the future. So I was already kind of bristling at this because, as it stood, I was in charge of IT, even if it was only me and one other guy, and I didn't like the idea of a demotion. Then he handed me a piece of paper with the specs that Fred wanted and needed to be able to work properly. It read, going from memory, as follows. HP or Dell laptop. Must have Intel i7-720QM. Windows 7 32-bit. 32 GB of RAM. 500 GB HD. ATI or NVIDIA graphic card. I kind of snickered. I said, "Can we call him?" We got Fred on the phone. "Fred, did you mean to specify Windows 7 64-bit? "No," says Fred, "it has to be 32-bit. 64-bit won't work with the applications I use." "Okay. So then we'll drop the memory down to 4 GB. "No," says Fred, "I need 32 GB or I won't be able to work efficiently." So I tell the really smart guy that 32 GB won't work in a 32-bit system. He insists it will. He knows what he needs and what he is doing, and just order it the way he specified. He can configure it to work just fine. I tell him that I would love to see this, as it basically breaks math. Long story short, I order it and, lo and behold, a 32-bit system can only use 4 GB of memory. He tells the president that I must have done something wrong with the setup or something on the network was preventing it from using all 32 GB. Facepalm. Later in the week my CFO/boss wants to have a meeting with me to discuss why we cannot configure it the way he wants and what we can do to solve this issue. So I go to the meeting and my boss asks me what is preventing you from configuring this the way he wants. Math. Math. Yes, math. You see, what 32-bit and 64-bit means is how many address registers a computer can access in memory. 32-bit means it can access 232 address registers, or a little over 4 billion ones and zeros, or 4 gigabytes. That's it. It's not up for debate. I can stick 106 of memory in there and it will still only use 4 gigabytes. It cannot be changed because you cannot change the math. Did you explain it to him? No, I did not. Because he said he wanted it that way and he could configure it to work. But, said the CFO, you said it couldn't work. What can he do to make it work? Nothing. Again. Math. In the end, Fred said he would just deal with it. He lasted about 8 months and was asked to leave after he spent $7,500 at a Vegas strip club with clients one night. Apparently, math was never a strong suit of his. So, I do freelance IT for small businesses. One of my customers decided to replace me. The company they replaced me with is really just the IT director of the local community college. He is a people manager, and know next to nothing about actual IT. But he's a friend of one of the employees and he's cheap. So I tell my customer good luck and contact me if they ever need me. It wasn't even a week and the first thing this guy tried to do he botched. I get a call from him in a panic. He was tasked with replacing their ancient Avaya phone system with a modern VoIP system. This is what he did. He tested all the phones connected at his office, and they worked. The next day he takes them out to the customer's office. He plugs a phone directly into the ISP gateway and the phone connects. So he calls the VoIP company and tells them all is good, the phones are connecting correctly, and they can start porting the phone numbers over from the POTS lines to the VoIP service. While the porting is happening, he starts disconnecting the old phones at people's desks and connecting the new VoIP phones. And when he is done he realizes none of the phones are connecting. The VoIP company tells him to run a connection test tool on his laptop plugged in through one of the phones, and sure enough the connection is being blocked. But by this point the numbers are already ported to the VoIP service and the customer is without phones, and he has no clue why they aren't working. That's when I get the call. He explains what he did and I asked him why he didn't test the phones from behind the firewall. And I shit you not, his exact words were, "What's a firewall?" Seriously, he had no clue what a firewall was. He always just assumed you plugged everything into the ISP gateway and used that. I was floored. This is a guy that is doing business IT and he doesn't know what a firewall is. Oh, and the kicker, his next project is to set up a site-to-site VPN connection between their current office and a new office they just rented. He told them he totally knows how to do that. The guy that doesn't know what a firewall is claims he knows how to set up site-to-site VPNs. So I logged in remotely and set up the firewall properly to work with the VoIP phones. I'm sure the owner of the business will question why I had to be brought in to fix the phones when he receives my detailed bill. TL, doctor, customer of mine won with a cheaper friend of an employee for their IT and fired me. The person they hired doesn't even know what a firewall is. Several years ago, I worked as a software developer for a company that provided network and desktop support for our customers. This story is about a new customer we got, that was an e-commerce business. They hired us to fix some of their servers, but the problem was much deeper than that. It seems that the company had, over a period of several years, gradually let go each and every person in their IT department. The last IT employee had provided a couple of Word documents containing some server IPs and admin credentials, and then they let him go. This seemed to be part of a larger pattern, as the company was housed in a large business complex, which they used to fully occupy. However, half of the building was now unoccupied, a significant portion of the building was sublet to other companies, and the current staff was maybe half a dozen people. This company had over a dozen servers, but no network diagram, and no one there who even understood what most of the servers did. Our techs did their best to sort it out based on the documentation from former IT, and managed to restore the server that failed. That server failing was what prompted the company to reach out to us. A couple of weeks later, I was called in to meet with the person running the company, The actual owners were completely removed from the company's operations. It was simply a cash cow that they had zero involvement with. It seemed that separate from the initial failed server, their e-commerce site was now broken. Keep in mind, this e-commerce site is literally the entire product of the company. They wanted me to fix the site. However, they didn't have any documentation for the site. They didn't have anyone on staff who understood the code base. They didn't have credential to the source control. They didn't even know which servers the application was hosted on. Apparently they had outsourced 100% of the development of the application to Russian programmers, where in the US, nearly a decade ago. The programmers built the app, configured all of the interactions, and provided zero documentation, or possibly the company discarded the documentation. After some investigation, I discovered that the application was actually scattered among at least 3 different servers. 2 of the servers were AWS, and the company did not know the username and password of the AWS account. They did have credentials for the 3rd server, but that was simply the host for the front-end interface, and a customer mailing list. All of the actual business logic, which the manager I was working with could only explain in the most rudimentary terms, was hosted on those 2 AWS sites. I did find the problem, an expired security certificate, and we got them back up and running. But I did my best to explain that if anything else went wrong, there was an excellent chance that there would be no way to fix it. 2 weeks later, the site went down again. One of the AWS sites wasn't accepting HTTP requests anymore. When I explained that I couldn't access the server to find out what was happening, because they didn't have credentials, I was asked if I could just rebuild the application on a new server. I told them that it was possible, but that I'd need someone to explain, in detail, all of the necessary business logic, and that they'd lose their customer database, again, no credentials, and have to start that over from the scratch. They said oh, okay, and that was the end of the conversation. I have no idea if they're still in business,